All right, in this video, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be showing you how you can make a job plot in Sheets, and it's actually really, really simple. So I've done a few things already. You'll notice I've got my data entered, and I purposely chose data that I knew would be different from yours. So I've got the milliliters of NaOH added in the first column and the temperature change added in the second column. And the reason I entered it in this order is you'll always, for ease, want to put in the stuff that you know is going to be on your x-axis in your first column and the stuff that's going to be on your y-axis in your second column. Now, if this was all I needed, if this was a quote-unquote regular graph, then I could just highlight this data right now and go to Insert Chart and make my graph, and I'd be good. But this is a job plot, and a job plot is a little bit different because a job plot is supposed to have two lines, sort of the ascending line and then the descending line, with the point in the middle being that point where you have a maximum stoichiometric ratio where there's no limiting reactant, everything gets used up. So the point is that you have actually two lines. And the way that you can actually pretty easily make two lines on Sheets is to separate out your data. So I know that I'm going to have two lines basically based on my temperature change, not on my milliliters of NaOH. And if I look at my temperature change, I notice that like 9 right there, that's my maximum. It's lower both before and after the 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate out the data. So I'm just going to select this stuff. I'm going to cut it and then paste it in the next column to make a separate column for it. And what that's telling Sheets is that this is one set of data and this is a different set of data. And what that will allow me to do is actually get trend lines on both of them, which is really what we want. So having sort of separated out the data based on where the maximum is, now all I'm going to do is make the graph. So I'm just going to highlight all the numbers that I want to be on my graph. I'm going to go to Insert Chart. You always go to Insert Chart, and they always love to try to make you make a column chart, and we don't want to make a bar graph. So under Chart Type, you will be tempted by line. You are never going to pick line, because what line does is it graphs every column as a separate piece of information. We don't want that. You're going to scroll down to Scatter. We're always going to choose an XY scatter plot, because that's telling it that you got to do the combination of the X value and the Y value in order to make the graph. Cool, so now I have my graph and it's actually looking really, really good. So now to finish up the graph, I'm going to go into Customize. And first up, I'm going to give the graph some titles because we always want to title our graph. So I'll call this job plot of acid A and NaOH. And then also in this section is where I'm going to give the axes some titles. Always give your axes titles. So the horizontal axis, that's your x-axis. So this is milliliters of NaOH added. And then your vertical axis is temperature change in degrees Celsius. Cool, so now I have that in. I always like to add grid lines as much as possible, so that's going to be down here. So we'll take it one at a time. Notice that you can choose both the horizontal and the vertical. I'm okay with leaving the major grid lines where they are, but let's add some minor grid lines on both the horizontal and the vertical axis in order to give just a little bit more information. Okay, so now the big thing for us in chemistry, oftentimes we'll want to get a trend line on a graph, basically the equation of the lines, so that we can extrapolate information from it or interpolate information from it, meaning we collected some data, but now let's get a little bit more data from it. And that's going to be under series. It's always going to be under series, under customized, and that's where we are. And it's literally right here, trend line. Ooh, notice how it added those lines just like that. And because you entered in the data separately, one in one column, one in one Y column, one in another Y column, it knew to make two separate trend lines. And that is exactly what we want. But then wouldn't it be nice to actually see the equations for the trend lines? Wouldn't that be helpful as well? That's under label right here. And right now it's on none, but we want to use the equation. So by selecting use equation, it tells me that the y equals mx plus b. It is automatically set to linear, right? Linear is right here, so this is in y equals mx plus b format. For this line is y equals negative 1.1 x plus 15, and the equation for this line right here is y equals 1.52x plus 1.28. point. Now, if we're looking at this for a job plot, the point of intersection is our most important point. It is that point right here. It is not that point, so that's not the ratio we would use, but here's where we can interpolate information from our graph. So I noticed that the point of intersection where the maximum was reached was at, if I'm estimating here, unfortunately I can't add more grid lines than this. This is where Sheets is lesser than Excel, because in Excel you could add all kinds of grid lines. Or if you can, if you find out a way to add more grid lines than this, please let me know, and I'd love to figure that out. But if I'm estimating, maybe that's at like 5.2 milliliters of NaOH added, and I know that that was, and I can then use that information to work out the volume of acid that we must have had with that, and then work out the ratio in figure out an approximate ratio from that. But then the graph is all set really, and then it's all set to insert into your lab report. So, right, wasn't that easy? That wasn't too bad. But again, the big trick, just to move the graph out of the way, in order to make a really nice job plot on Sheets, is to do this separation of your temperature values right around where you know the maximum is. I don't think it matters if you put the maximum either with the first set or with the second set. You'll get a comparable intersection point either way. But there you go. There we got a nice job plot, and one that you can then use for your lab report.